In his letter to the Romans, the Apostle Paul paints a stark picture of moral decline. He speaks of men abandoning natural relations with women, consumed instead by desires for one another. This vivid imagery is not a condemnation against natural sensual acts, but a broader lament on turning away from the intended devotional experience. Paul's choice of words is intense, reflecting his disapproval and concern for the spirituality of the Roman priesthood. He sees these actions as a reflection of a tainted religious society, where the pursuit of temporal desires has led to profound spiritual consequences. In stark contrast, the Old Testament offers a tender portrayal of the bond between David and Jonathan. Their souls are described as being knit together. When they part, they kiss and weep, a powerful expression of their profound connection and mutual respect. The kiss here symbolizes a solemn farewell, a mark of loyalty and fraternal affection above romantic or sexual enticement. This narrative invites us to explore the concept of relationship within the Bible. Throughout the Bible, the act of kissing carries significant symbolic weight. It can represent enticement, loyalty, and even betrayal. For instance, Job reflects on how a kiss can be an outward sign of secret inward temptation. This notion of a kiss as a form of enticement, whether genuine or deceitful, permeates biblical literature. Proverbs offers another layer to this symbolism, contrasting the faithful words of a friend with the deceitful kisses of an enemy. In the narrative of Ruth, a kiss marks a poignant goodbye, an acknowledgement of parting ways. This act, laden with emotional significance, further illustrates how a kiss can convey deep feelings of connection and loss, without necessarily implying romantic or sexual undertones. To fully grasp the Bible's perspective on homosexuality, it's essential to consider its broader philosophical context. In the visions of Ezekiel, we encounter imagery of priests weeping together. These visions critique the leadership of Israel, depicting them as lusting amongst themselves for something hidden from the eyes of the public. The Bible often uses symbolic language to address deeper issues. In Romans, Paul's critique extends beyond the natural to encompass a priesthood's collective departure from truth. This context helps us understand that the Bible's references to same-sex relations often carry layers of symbolic meaning, addressing issues of spiritual corruption and devotional decay. By exploring these narratives and symbols, we gain a richer understanding of how the Bible addresses complex issues like homosexuality. Rather than viewing these texts through a purely literal lens, we are invited to consider the deeper philosophical messages they convey. Through this exploration, we uncover the ways in which biblical writers used figurative language to address the struggle between human nature and the devotional character. The public and the private response from the content on the subject of homosexuality, I'm grateful for it. An atmosphere for learning, and especially learning the application of context. Because in 2024, our perception, our notions, they need to move on, and in a positive way, from what the Christian theory is holding it to. Now that will be right for whoever that will be right for, but the main scope of everything that I do is for ensuring and for advancing practical devotional application to the conscience of the conversation, to the conscience of the devotional conversation. And one of the issues that deals with, or that is within that sphere, that realm, is homosexuality. And to the Bible's mind, as in the previous video on this subject, the issue to the Bible's mind primarily isn't natural. Natural homosexuality isn't the issue. Is that saying that natural homosexuality is not wrong, that it is wrong? My concern is Bible. My concern is looking at the context therein. And the ultimate context, we know the context of the natural world of things for our own individual self. No one has to tell anyone what's right or what's wrong, right? And we don't need a book to do that or to justify anything of that nature. We should know that. But when we're dipping into the Bible, we're dipping into a realm that is not simply literal, that is not simply natural. The entire frame of the Bible is philosophical. Its nature is philosophical. This is literature correcting religion. There is no religion attached to the Bible. This is a piece of work that is actually correcting religion philosophically. And everything therein that is given to the realm or to the landscape primarily for religion. What happens after that, whatever human takes that and does whatever that is after that, that's their business. But for the individual concerned with personal and devotional growth, in 2024, a level of maturity is needed to be called into action. And that level of maturity involves context, the idea of placing self aside so that context can speak. And in context, the issue within the scriptures is not literal when it comes to homosexuality, and primarily for the majority of everything else, it is not literal. It is philosophical. It is figurative. We are in the world of a large parable that has to be understood according to the context of which that parable is given, so that we can then purge and get out of that concrete meaning. Prune and purge and get out of that concrete meaning. And the pruning and the purging for the concrete meaning of homosexuality, said plainly as illustrated in the previous video on this content, is the idea of priest doing things with priests that are unseemly. Bible doesn't define man as literal biological male in a primary context. Man to the Bible's mind is priest, is messenger, minister. The backdrop of that illuminates much of what the Bible is about, especially concerning the subject of homosexuality, which is not of man with man as with womankind. It is priest as with womankind. And we're going to see what to the Bible's mind womankind is. That's the main idea, the main condemnation, sticking to the scope of Bible. We're not putting any sort of secular anything into this. There's no secular opinion. There's no secular self. There's no secular religion in this. There's no non-denominational opinion theory in this. We're simply looking at this from Bible. And the Bible has an issue and a narrative of its own. That's all that's going on here. And the issue and the narrative that the Bible has is a controversy with priests having intercourse with priests. Not literally. This is philosophically, this is religious. Priests having intercourse with priests and producing an outcome that is completely negligent, of which in the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 3, this is the work of the sons of men, and this is what their gift is, to have to their heart this particular labor, to fill their heart and to know nothing of what actually concerns the living mind of the living God. The previous material on this content of homosexuality dealt with the aspect of the Leviticus side of things first of all. Looking at the Leviticus side of things, which things in the book of Leviticus are for a priesthood and are for what is called the children of Israel. Children of Israel, 12 denominations. The voice of Moses is going to 12 denominations. Again, the voice of Moses is going to 12 denominations, and specifically it is geared for, which is why it is in the book of Leviticus, the Levitical priesthood. The things therein are not written to apply to the Babylonians, to the Egyptians, to anyone else. In the same sense that the Code of Hammurabi was supposed to be for his host. In the same sense that the laws of Ma'at are supposed to be for the host of Ma'at. The code, the law of Moses, is specifically for the congregation. The congregation. This isn't a secular, whatever you want to put that to, political, whatever you want to put that to. This is a domain that is ruled, whose politics are ruled by religious law. And the members of this environment are for whom this is for, and specifically, which is why it is in the book of Leviticus, for the Levites to remember. For the Levites to remember. Now, if we're going to hold this literal, and when I say hold this literal, meaning if everything in the book of Leviticus, and especially the man with mankind as with womankind reference, does that mean everything in the book of Leviticus is relevant to everyone outside, and especially in 2024? Example, there is a charge to maintain the seventh day Sabbath in the book of Leviticus. And this charge to maintain the rest of the seventh day is for the congregation of Israel. If you will advocate that homosexuality is a condemnation, literal, are you also going and willing to advocate that the charge for the seventh day's rest is also literal to everyone within and outside of the congregation? We can't pick and choose, right? We can't pick and choose. If we're going to be consistent, and if we're going to read literally, we have to remain consistently literal. So if there is an issue picked up with homosexuality in Leviticus, the same issue needs to be picked up with the seventh day Sabbath. If the God of Israel is talking to you and everyone else outside of the congregation concerning man with man, as with womankind, well then also that same applies to you and to everyone else outside of the congregation concerning the seventh day's rest. Is that the way that it is when we look outside? No, it's not. There's a lot of picking and choosing going on of what suits the natural human religious experience without actual context. So we don't actually think about these things, and we should. Because the actual application for what's going on here, if you're going to be literal, is to a congregation that's not a street congregation. Moses isn't talking to Baptists. He's not talking to a Seventh-day Adventist. He's not talking to a Seventh-day Baptist. He's not talking to a Protestant or a Catholic or a non-denominational Protestant or Catholic or whatever you want to call yourself. He's speaking to 12 denominations in that point in time, and specifically to the priesthood of those 12 denominations, which is why this is in the book of Leviticus, because it's for the Levites, the Levitical priesthood. Context matters. Context matters. So if this isn't going to be something we're going to look at literally, in 2024, 3,000 years ago, the story might be different. But in 2024, this needs to be applied philosophically. Philosophically. That means the identification of quote unquote Israel is going to be very different in 2024. Because the literal side of this is non-existent. Our minds need to move on from inherited and self-cultivated religious theories if we're going to maintain a devotional character that is supported by the mind at the core of the scriptures. That's the Levite side, the Levitical side of things. The other side from the previous material was from the Roman side of things, looking at the unseemly works of men doing things with men, and of men burning in lust for one another. Let's read that. Romans 1:27. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burn in their lust one toward another, men with men working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error, which was meet. We saw the unseemly works in our previous video. They are established in verses prior to this. Yet there is an issue of this lusting, men lusting after men, doing things through that lust. What does it mean? What is this? What is this lusting that men are doing and are going through with men?
Are you seeking a deeper connection with your inner self? A way to align your life with your spiritual values? Through guided reflection, mindful discussions, and personal growth counsel, Justification helps you explore your beliefs, strengthen your faith, and cultivate a life of purpose and meaning. Join a community of like-minded individuals on a journey to spiritual fulfillment. Embrace your devotional character with Justification.
Context matters, and especially context from within the Bible. Our personal opinion when it comes to understanding what's in the scriptures means nothing. My personal opinion when it comes to learning anything within the scriptures means nothing. It means nothing because there already exists a narrative that needs to be understood. If we are not willing to understand that narrative, which involves placing self to the side and letting context speak without self, we aren't going to be able to understand what's going on there. And to the Bible's mind, men, they don't equate to natural, biological male. Men equal priest, messenger, prophet. It's very plain. It's very evident. Men doing things with men that are unseemly. Man lying with man, as with womankind, is priest lying with priest. Doing things that are unseemly is minister lying with minister, as with womankind. The main issue here is between affection. The main issue is affection between priest and priest, affection between minister and minister, and the context of such is not positive. It's not positive. Looking at 1 Samuel 18 in verse 1. 1 Samuel 18 in verse 1. And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. I don't know if we are familiar with the context of which the narrative between David and Jonathan is written, but it is not written naturally. The context for which the relationship involving David and Jonathan, how it is written, it is not written in a natural sense. These two have a profound and affectionate love for one another. They have a profound and affectionate love for one another. And you can say that they lusted after one another. And there is a context for that. 1 Samuel 20, what kind of relationship, what kind of context? 1 Samuel 20, 40 to 42. And Jonathan gave his artillery unto his lad, and said unto him, Go, carry them to the city. And as soon as the lad was gone, David arose out of a place toward the south, and fell on his face to the ground, and bowed himself 3 times. And they kissed one another, and wept with one another, until David exceeded. And Jonathan said to David, Go in peace, for as much as we have sworn both of us in the name of the Lord, saying, The Lord be between me and thee, and between my seed and thy seed forever. And he arose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. This type of affection between these two, the way that the author's writing their narrative is a bit suspect if we are not keen to context. It's very suspect to see these two in this sort of way. What does it mean to kiss someone then? What does it mean to kiss someone? Because there is a context to this. Job 31:26-28. If I beheld the sun when it shined, or the moon walking in brightness, and my heart hath been secretly enticed, or my mouth hath kissed my hand, this also were an iniquity to be punished by the judge, for I should have denied the God that is above. The enticing of the heart, if we are following context and how the Bible defines itself, through word association, the enticing of the heart is the kissing of the hand. And my heart hath been secretly enticed, or my mouth hath kissed my hand. The enticing of the heart is the kissing of the hand. The act of the hand is based upon the heart's enticement. When kissing, one is being enticed. To kiss someone is to entice someone. To kiss someone is to entice someone. Proverbs 27:5-6. Proverbs 27:5-6. Open rebuke is better than secret love. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. We can break this down. We have a contrast between faithful and deceitful, friend and enemy, wounds and kisses. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. The contrast is between faithful and deceitful, that's one. Friend and enemy, that's two contrasts. Wounds and kisses, that's three. For a kiss, we can fairly conclude, can be perceived as a sort of wound. A kiss is an enticement. A kiss is a wound. A kiss can be a wound leading to a positive or a negative enticement. Leading to a positive or a negative enticement. Looking at Ruth chapter 1:13-15. Would you tarry for them till they were grown? Would you stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes, that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. And they lifted up their voice and wept again. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her. And she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people and unto her gods. Return thou, she is saying to Ruth, after thy sister-in-law. Looking at the illustration of a kiss, we can see that a kiss can be a wound leading to a positive or a negative enticement. And in the context of Ruth, to kiss someone can be also observed as a figurative illustration as saying goodbye. To kiss someone in context to the David and Jonathan scene is to say goodbye to someone, which is why weeping is followed after. Instead of writing another 3 pages and a long number of verses to illustrate the narrative, the author is cutting that short, saying that they kissed one another, connoting that they're saying goodbye to one another, and they're weeping, which follows that. But the situation is a bit suspect due to the affection that the two hold for one another. Due to the affection that the two hold for one another, their relationship is suspect. If we want to take this to be a literal relationship that is whose affection is not natural, is abnormal between two males, we can do that. Bible is allowing the affection, the narrative therein, to speak to the fondness between these two. They are so tightly knit together to the point where Jonathan wants to make sure that no matter what happens to David, no matter what happens to him, their offspring will continue in peace by a covenant. David will take care of his offspring if he should ever pass away or anything. He will take care of David's offspring if he should ever pass away or anything. And of course, David fulfills this when Jonathan does pass away, after he does. Their fondness They're lusting after one another is what the author Samuel is highlighting here, to the point where they are establishing a covenant with one another, to the point where they are weeping with one another, to kiss one another, to say goodbye to one another. Their relationship is that affectionate. The enticement of that kiss does not lead to a wound, it leads to a covenant. But the context of Romans, of where these men are lusting after one another, it's in a negative connotation. Is there a scene in the Bible where men are weeping with one another as if to kiss one another? Is there a scene in the Bible where the priesthood is weeping with one another as if kissing one another? And the mindset of the scriptures is allowing the observer to understand that this is wrong, and that what's going on is not held to the same context of what was going on between David and Jonathan. Looking in the book of Ezekiel 8:12-14. Ezekiel 8:12-14. Then said he unto me, Son of man, hast thou seen what the ancients of the house of Israel do in the dark, every man in the chamber of his imagery? For they say, the Lord seeth us not, the Lord hath forsaken the earth. He also said unto me, Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations that they do. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was toward the north, and behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. Now the priesthood does not involve literal women. We have to remember that Ezekiel 8 is a vision. All of Ezekiel is a vision, a majority of it. Ezekiel 8 is vision. Ezekiel 8 is vision. These are not literal women. These literal women symbolize something. What do these women, what should they symbolize in vision? Ezekiel 23, 2-4. Son of man, there sat two women, the daughters of one mother, and they committed whoredoms in Egypt. They committed whoredoms in their youth. There were their breasts pressed, and there they bruised the teats of their virginity. And the names of them were Aholah the elder, and Aholibah her sister. And they were mine, and they bare sons and daughters. Their names, thus were their names. Samaria is Aholah, and Jerusalem is Aholibah. What we have in Ezekiel chapter 8 is a parable within a parable, a vision within a riddle. The women weeping are not literal women. These women represent the denominations, the churches, the Jerusalems and the Samarias of the 12 denominations for which this is pertaining to. Ezekiel isn't brought into vision and into the temple of what's going on in Babylon. Ezekiel isn't in vision and brought into the temple of what's going on in Greece. Ezekiel isn't concerned with the Etruscans. Ezekiel is concerned with what's going on in the congregation of Israel. And what's going on in the congregation of Israel is that their leaders are weeping together over a particular deity. Tammuz, a dying and rising figure. This is an illustration depicting what should go on and what will continue in latter years. The Christian theory and their priesthood is doing the same thing. Tammuz is just going by a new name. This weeping together as if kissing, this is the same sort of sentiment, this is the same sort of context of which in Romans concerning the lusting after one another, the men with men lusting after one another, doing things unseemly. This is the unseemly work that's going on. Ezekiel's recording it. Ezekiel 8, this is the unseemly work. From the first verse to the last verse, that's the unseemly work. And it's going on among priesthoods. It's going on among priests. priests are weeping together, affectionate for one another, enticing one another. They are kissing one another as if the context is they're saying, in a sense, goodbye. The sentiments of what you want to associate to that place there. This is figurative, this is philosophical. And it's in relation to priests doing this with priests. The leadership, the religious leadership, doing this amongst themselves. Having intercourse with one another. This isn't literal intercourse. This is religious intercourse. This is philosophical intercourse. This is the intercourse of ideology. And they're amongst one another, lusting after the ideologies of one another and the ideas of one another and the, however you want to phrase or place that. That's the context of which the Bible is placing this concept of homosexuality. That's the issue it's tackling. And that's an issue that's important. That's an issue that's important due to the concept of our own individual devotional growth and development. Because the more that we hang on to what is being lusted over from priest to priest, the more we are getting caught up in opinions that have nothing to do with, first of all, what is our own, and then an experience that has nothing to do with what is our own.
Let the Bible be your sanctuary of peace, reflection, and wisdom. Let each verse light your path, like a lantern guiding travelers through night's darkest hours. Embrace words of wisdom as leaves to a tree, each one vital for your growth and nourishment. In moments of uncertainty, let its counsel be the anchor, steadying your ship amidst life's stormy seas. Seek counsel not just in joy, but in trials, for in its guidance you'll find a friend. Let every parable, every psalm, resonate within you, creating a heart and soul that is newly attuned to think and feel. Thus, journey with the Bible as your guide and counselor, and let its wisdom light your path to an enduring peace.
So now the context of what's going on in Romans, it makes a lot more sense, and it should. There's nothing literally homosexual going on there. It's not about literal homosexuality. Jumping into that chapter now again. Romans 1:21-27, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections for their women, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was meet. Context is beautiful. Paul is citing the ancient machinations of a particular priesthood, and he is referring to the Roman priesthood of the Roman church, that they do not do what was anciently done. He's referring them to the past, because the past priesthood is doing what the priesthood of the Roman churches is doing. Everything that the author here is saying is a warning to the priesthood, that the priesthood do not do what was formerly done. The application here isn't to literal individuals. The author writing Romans isn't on the street of a boulevard giving this counsel to individuals walking by and ignoring him. This is going specifically to the priesthood, to the council of the leadership of the churches of the Roman area that are advancing, or that are supposedly supposed to be advancing what the author wants them to advance. We have to keep that into context. We have to keep that into context. And to correct them, the author is citing previous past instances of injustices among the priesthood. The former priesthood is doing what Paul is seeing the Christian priesthood doing in the churches of Rome. He does not want them to do what was done before, because what was done before led up to a flood, led up to, quote unquote, a flood, the destruction of the territory. And the destruction of the territory means an ending of what the priesthood should be giving. Author writing the book of Romans does not want this. He's citing the past for the present to correct itself. This isn't to anyone on the street. Again, this is held and this is given into the hand of the leadership, of the priests and ministers and the messengers of the Roman churches. As the ancient priesthood did things unseemly with themselves, and that led up to a flood, they are doing, the Roman church, the priesthood of the Roman churches, they are doing the same things which will inevitably lead up to a flood. Which is why prior to this verse, the author says that their deity does not like unrighteousness, and that unrighteousness will equate to an unveiling of wrath. It is after this point where the author cites the unveiling of wrath from unrighteousness that they then place their audience, the priesthood of the Roman churches, in remembrance of the past priesthood. That they do not commit the same things because they are committing the same things. This is a note to the priesthood, that priests stop infringing upon priests in a non-positive way, in a negative way. That they stop kissing one another, that they stop weeping with one another, that they stop handling the consciences of one another. Which is why to the Corinthians, the author writing the Corinthians says to his audience, which is the bishops, the priests, the priesthood of the Corinthian churches, why is it that my conscience should be validated by the conscience of another man? The issue of homosexuality is an issue that is not literal to the mind within the scriptures. The emphasis is on priesthood doing things with priesthood, is on priests doing things with priests, forgetting their women, and again, women, figurative term for church. Do everything with your woman, is what it's saying to the priest. Stop running from priest to priest. Let each man have his woman. Let each husband have their wife. Let each priest have their congregation. This is all marriage counsel that is given by the author writing the Corinthians and the Romans. This is figurative language for how to handle the organization of fellowship, its growth, its development, its care. This is parable. The ones reading this understand it. The ones reading it should understand it. And again, the ones reading it that should understand it, they're not streetwalkers. They're not individuals that are listening to someone speaking about the scriptures. These are individuals that are going to be speaking from them. This isn't anyone lay. This isn't anyone that has nothing to do or any care for what's going on in the scriptures. This is given to individuals who have the tending of flocks. And when I say tending of flocks, I'm pretty sure that will be understood as figurative language, but for some reason, we can't understand the figurative language of what the author in the book of Leviticus and in Romans is getting at. Everything that they are giving is to the priesthood and to their tending of flocks. If you really want to take care of your flock, priest needs to refrain from priest. No intercourse from priest and priest. The conscience of priest, stay from the conscience of priest. Be with your woman, be with your wife, be with your church or congregation. Grow that way. That's the counsel that the author is giving. Because when not following it, that's how gross heresy, according to the mind of the scriptures, takes place. The issue connected to the affection from kissing is one of enticement. Wounds of enticement, positive wounds or negative wounds. The context for which the Bible is framing the issue is negative. Negative enticement. And kissing is done with lips. Why the lips? Song of Solomon 7, 8, and 9. I said, I will go up to the palm tree, I will take hold of the boughs thereof. Now also thy breasts shall be as clusters of the vine, and the smell of thy nose like apples, and the roof of thy mouth like the best wine for my beloved, that goeth down sweetly, causing the lips of those that are asleep to speak. From lips come wine. From the lips come the wine. Wine appears from lips. What is wine? Ecclesiastes 2 and verse 3. I sought in mine heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainted mine heart with wisdom, and to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was that good for the sons of men, which they should do under the heaven all the days of their life. Wine equals wisdom. I sought in mine heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainting mine heart with wisdom. And the entire book of Ecclesiastes is the folly that comes from the type of wisdom appearing from priest to priest, or from the sons of men to the sons of men. The good for the sons of men is their homosexual practice of maintaining wisdom from their conscience to the wisdom of another priest's conscience. This is the frustration of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes translates to mean scorn. The entire book of Ecclesiastes is scorning the culture of the sons of men, which culture is homosexual in nature. Which homosexual nature is them laying hold on to wisdom that does not come from the scriptures, but that comes from one another passed down. Proverbs 20 and 1. What is wine? Wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. Again, paying attention to wine as being strong drink. Isaiah 5:11. Woe unto them that rise up early in the morning, that they may follow strong drink, that continue until night, till wine inflame them. Wine, strong drink. What does wine and strong drink have to do with the leadership, with the priesthood? Isaiah 28, 7 and 8. But they also have erred through wine, and through strong drink are out of the way. The priest and the prophet have erred through strong drink. They are swallowed up of wine. They are out of the way through strong drink. They err in vision. They stumble in judgment. All tables are full of vomit and filthiness, so that there is no place clean. When you drink too much alcohol, you end up throwing up. That's the illustration here. Drinking too much wine has caused the leadership, has caused the priests, has caused the prophets to spew onto their tables. Again, tables, this is figurative language. The vision. Wine means vision. Wine means judgment. Wine means wisdom. Out of the lips come wisdom, vision, and judgment. In reality, priests are weeping with one another, and in context, they are weeping with one another as kissing, the sentiment of that kissing one another for the sake of vision, wisdom, and judgment. They are weeping with one another and employing the act of kissing one another, that same sentiment, to entice one another by wisdom, by vision, by judgment. The scriptures, the author writing the Romans, the author writing Leviticus, in the chapters that were there quoted concerning quote-unquote homosexuality, the issue is to the priest and the priesthood, is a warning to stop taking wisdom, vision, and judgment from one another. The acts that are unseemly, the lusting that's going on, is a lust for the conscience, is a lust for what is thought, for a lust for what is opined, for a lust for what is to be articulated, for a lust for what is for their elocution when it comes to deciphering what the scriptures mean. The author of Ecclesiastes lived that homosexual lifestyle, and the entire book of Ecclesiastes, again, Ecclesiastes in English translates to scorn. The entire book is scorning the behavior and the process of the sons of men. The sons of men have a homosexual tendency to maintain wisdom among themselves, from among themselves, from among themselves, from among themselves. That's how they understand what's going on in the scriptures. They have no involvement at all with the actual context, but they are only taking what is among themselves and from among themselves and from among themselves to understand the scriptures. This is what leads on many occasions the author writing the Ecclesiastes narrative book to say, all is vanity. They hate their life as a member of the sons of men, or they hate their life as a member of a priesthood. The issue of homosexuality is an issue of the enticement that goes on from priest to priest. The Bible wants to nip that in the bud. The Bible wants to cancel that, because that's not the right experience for the individual that would want inward personal devotional growth and development. That's an experience for the sons of men. Again, Bible is letting their reader know the category of experiences and what not to follow. The context that the Bible is getting at is the context absolutely criticizing the culture that goes on in the seminary trained institutions, in the rabbinical school institutions. If we would allow ourselves to step into the parable that the Bible is giving to us, that's what we would see. Bible does not want their student to go down that path. And so they are giving, albeit in illustrations that are dark, as it says in the Psalms, and figurative, warnings and counsel. The homosexual nature that goes on in the learning institutions only equates to vomit upon tables. That's why nothing can be understood. That's why there is no pure concept of anything from such, because their tables are filled with vomit. There's nothing clean on them. And yet, there is a continual pathway to them as if there is something there. Bible wants that pathway, or the individual mind, a specific individual mind, to understand that their conversation is worth more than where that pathway is leading them to. And so the Bible is exposing culture. Bible is exposing culture and is warning of it so that their individual student can know and can excel beyond it.